Has this ever happened to you? You're walking through life, everything's going great, your personal finances are fine, and then just like that, a $600 expense completely derails any momentum that you had, and it just sets you back a little bit, and now you have to play catch up, you're playing catch up, you're playing catch up, and then you catch back up, and things are going well again, and then a $700 expense comes out of nowhere, and then it backs you up again, and then you're catching up, you're catching up, you're catching up. This kind of situation is way too common for my liking, and in this video, I'm going to show you how you can change that starting today with an emergency fund. So not only am I going to share my opinion on why emergency funds are so important, but how you can actually set yours up today for free, and then also what's the amount that you should be having in this emergency fund. But a little extra context about me. My name's Chris. I've been an accountant for 10 years now, and I made this file specifically for you, someone who's trying to level up their personal finances and keeps finding themselves getting hit with unexpected expense after unexpected expense. And this emergency fund calculator is in the description of this video in my personal finance level up kit, which also has the budget template, debt payment calculator, and net worth tracker. So make sure you go download this so you can follow along. Let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome into the emergency fund calculator. And the first thing you're going to want to do is make a copy of this file because you won't be able to make any edits. So go to this file button here, go to make a copy. You're going to click on this folder here, and you can just click on My Drive, select, and you can make a copy right into your Google Drive, and now you'll be able to save it. Another way is you go back up to File, and you can email this to yourself, email file, and just for file type, make sure you're selecting spreadsheet or Excel. The last option here is you go to Download, and again, just make sure you're picking some sort of spreadsheet option like Excel. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start talking about this calculator, okay? As you can see, it's pretty simple. Everything's on one page, and I'm gonna kind of go through what you need to do to fill this out, what all this means in a second, but I wanna talk bigger picture about why emergency funds are so important. The way I like to think about this and tell other people so that they can visualize it is, surely you've played a video game where the main character has a health bar, right? And there's a mission that you're going on, and it's possible that you could reduce your health bar. So beating the level or beating the game, let's think of that as a financial goal for you. So maybe that's paying down debt, maybe that's saving for a house, maybe that's investing for your retirement. And then the health bar of your main character, I want you to think of that as your emergency fund, okay? So everything's going great, you're in the game, you're going through the thing, and then you start getting attacked from all over the place. Your health bar is going down, the screen's flashing red, maybe there's some sounds going on. What do you do in that situation? Do you power through and just hope for the best? Do you go run and hide until your health bar can be fixed? What do you do? In most cases, you probably try to stay alive to, keep trudging along. Even if that means you're not making forward progress, you don't want to make backwards progress, right? So if you're in the game, you're getting shot at, your health bar goes down, and you just decide to trudging on through, and you die in the game. You have to go back to the last checkpoint, or you go back to the start of the game, okay? And that's exactly what happens if you don't have an emergency fund, similar to how I outlined in the introduction of this video, right? You have a big expense come through, boom, backs you up. You play catch up, you're getting through all the checkpoints again, and then boom, another one, you're going back to the beginning. So what I want you to do is, if you're the main character in this game, get behind that rock, get the med kit, right? Hang out to live another day. Not making forward progress isn't necessarily a bad thing, okay? We just don't want to be making backwards progress. And an emergency fund is going to help you do that with your personal finances. It should be seen as an insurance to your personal finances, right? You want to reach all these financial goals. You want to keep progressing forward. Not having an emergency fund leaves you vulnerable to opportunities to backstep and backtrack and then always feel like you're catching up, okay? And I want you to stop having to do that. So hopefully this will help. So if you've already filled out the budget template, which I would recommend doing first, by the way, you'll notice that this file looks pretty similar, right? And that was intentional, because what I want you to be able to do is take your budgeted items and just shift them over to your emergency fund, because in most cases, most of your expenses are considered high priority items that you should be treating as an emergency expense that you need to live on, okay? So we're gonna dive through that, and we're gonna just start with the fixed expenses, because obviously if emergency comes up, you're still gonna need to pay your mortgage or your rent. You're still gonna need to put your kids into daycare. You're gonna still need to have insurance for your car, right? So you're still gonna need all these things. And let's just pretend that I typed all these out, and ta-da! So here are your fixed expenses totaling $3,350. I think the fixed expenses are pretty self-explanatory, okay? This is like your highest priority needs, and they're amounts that don't really change during the month. So now let's go over to the variable expenses, and this can be a little trickier. Obviously, there's still some critical items on here like groceries. We still got to eat, right? Utilities, kind of need our lights on, and some sort of form of transportation to and from work or whatever seems pretty important still, right? So again, by the power of technology, let's input some numbers there. Ta-da. Okay, so now we have a total for our variable expenses about $1,000. Let's move into the financial goals and debt type section. Now you'll notice with the variable expenses, we have things on here like gifts, dining out, activities, right? And let's be real, if it's a serious emergency, like serious emergency where you are going to be poor or homeless, you're probably going to just cut these out immediately. Okay, so you have to be really conscious about what actually is considered an expense. And sure, for the purposes of this exercise, the emergency fund is just sort of to help build up a fund in case you get in trouble with those small minor expenses. But if you have some big life event that changes a lot of things and you need to like cut expenses instantly, I just want you to think about that and what would work well for you personally. But really the goal of this file is just to create an account with a large enough dollar amount in it so that you feel comfortable if God forbid something were to happen. Okay, so now let's move over to the financial goals and the debt type. Now, in a perfect world, these two categories for you are treated like expenses, okay? They're monthly expenses that come out of your bank account every month, similar to other expenses, and they're automated, okay? So if you have a financial goal, it's the best practice to automate them so it turns into a monthly expense for you. Same thing with your debt. If you're trying to pay it down faster, don't just wait to the end of the month to see if you have any money left. Make it a priority at the beginning of the month and automate it so the payment goes out. And now instead of focusing on, do I have money for debt? It's, oh, do I have money for some other life things that maybe aren't as important, okay? So I really want you guys to focus on your financial goals, paying down your debt, because this is going to help you just achieve many financial goals throughout your life. So the financial goals section, it's things like your emergency fund, retirement, you have other investments, etc. And I'm just going to add my item there. So there we go. I have $125 set aside every month for a kid's education. What I didn't mention before is all of these categories here, you could change them to your preference, okay? Based on whatever you think will fit in your life. I've just put some generic topics in here, and then you have a whole ton of categories that you can utilize, okay? And again, if you've worked on the budget template, you have seen this already, and you've probably finagled it. That's why I set it up, so you could just copy and paste each of these sections over. So let's go to the debt, and we'll just add our recurring debt payments that we're automating from our bank account. And now we are done. So everything is set up. These are our monthly expenses for the most part, right? Maybe there's, plus or minus whatever. This is intended to be more higher level and it's not as granular. So if you're off like plus or minus $100 or $200, it doesn't really matter. This is just to give you an idea and a comfort zone. So once we go through how much money you should be having in there, this is just sort of an exercise to see like what I would need to do to be able to save for my current lifestyle. So now that we have these, right, I mentioned that we have a total down in each of these sections, but nothing's popping up here, right? So that's because we need to add a number here for how many months do you want to save for. Now, if you were to look up online how many months worth of expenses you should have in your emergency fund, every single article seems to just be copied and pasted onto one another. Everyone says, experts say, have 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses for your emergency fund. And ideally, in a perfect world, sure, that sounds amazing. But let's just look at this really quickly. We have about $5,000 here, I think exactly, for your monthly expenses. Now, if you were to save 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, we're talking $15,000 to $30,000. Now, would you feel secure if you had that much money? Yes, of course. But who has that kind of money to just lay out right now and just fund an emergency fund like that, right? So what I like to think of is how much money would I need to cover most big unexpected expenses that would possibly come up, okay? So write down a list even of the things that have happened to you recently within the last year or possibly things that could happen, and just get a number of where you feel comfortable that it would cover most things. And that would be like your starter emergency fund. That's what I want you guys to focus on. Is that number $1,000? Is that number $2,000? Is it $500? Okay, so you know your personal finances better than anyone. So that's what I would recommend the exercise you do for this, because 3 to 6 months of expenses is not reasonable for everyone. It's just not. Most people don't have that kind of money to just have to sit on the side. Like you're using that money to like create other financial goals or pay down debt or like just survive and pay the bills, right? So this section here, how many months do you want to save for? So this is a section that we would want to input, okay? We want to put the number in here. So let's just have some fun just to show you. Here's our 3 months. We hit enter. And then boom, our emergency fund goal, like I mentioned, $15,000 for 3 months if you have $5,000 of expenses, right? So play around with this number. Obviously yours won't be as clean as 15,000. It's probably going to be a little different, but let's, you play around with this. There's the 30,000, but what about 1 month, right? We know it's $5,000 a month, but then we could also do decimals, right? So what about half a month? Let's say that that's our goal first. Let's say $2,500. I would feel pretty comfortable that most expenses would be falling under that umbrella of $2,500. So we have that amount, we have $2,500, that's our fund goal. Now this section here is how much money do you have currently in an emergency fund? Now, if you have zero, that's okay, we just put zero. This is where we enter that. And then down here, it's gonna show us the amount needed to reach the goal. So obviously, if we want $2,500, we have zero in it, we need $2,500. But this is where so going back to the budget, if you have extra money that you're able to find with the 3-month look back that we talk about in the budget, and you don't have an emergency fund, I know that paying down debt feels like a priority to you, or maybe another financial goal, but if you have a $0 emergency fund, just think about all the times that the hundreds of dollars thing has set you back for multiple months. So basically, here's what's going to happen, right? We set up our emergency fund for $2,500 and we're like, yeah, we're feeling good. We're paying down debt. We're reaching other financial goals. And then that $700 thing hits and it's like, oh, crap. But you know what? I'm prepared for it. We take out $700 from the emergency fund, right? So now our emergency fund's at $1,800 and we continue to pay off our debt. We continue to do the other things because we didn't have to impact those to pay the $700. It just came out of a fund that was sitting over here waiting for some stuff to come up, okay? And then once we're at $1,800, we want to put more money back into it. So maybe we're taking $100 or $200 the next couple months out of our financial goal just to like push this back up, because once you are in the safety, you never want to go back to the start of the level, right? You want to just keep trudging forward. You don't want to have to go to the last checkpoint like, oh my God, it's so far back. I don't want to have to do that whole thing again. I just want to sit behind this rock for a minute and wait for my health bar to go back up, and then we trudge forward. That's why we do this. That's why we create an emergency fund. And then once you're going through it, again, this is only half of a month, right? So obviously to feel even more comfortable, like let's say, I lost my job and it's like, oh my God, like I would need more than $2,500 and pretty quickly, right? And you probably feel like the same thing. So build it to a number that you think would catch most of the things that would ever come up for you. And then slowly build that up over time and get to a point where it's like super comfortable and then it's super duper comfortable, right? And I would start looking at the emergency fund as something that you just need to prioritize if you're at zero. All right, guys, that was it for this one. Make sure again to check out the description, download the personal finance level up kit for the budget template, debt payment calculator, emergency fund calculator, which we talked about today, and the net worth tracker. I will see you in the next one.